Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You're on Digital Perspectives. Make sure you give us a follow at Dig Perspectives at the top of the screen. Look here, a little different. It's a party. Got a lot of people here with us. The LInqto fam, John Deaton, Jeremy Hogan, Linda P. Jones, and attorney seal and digital asset investor, the GOAT himself. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing great. How's it going, Brad?
Doing really great. I want to thank you all for being here. Listen, before we get started, it's LInqto Private Investing Made Simple. We're so glad that we could have Ray and Nick be here. Ray, you guys have had a breakout month. Tell us about that real quick.
We had an explosive month, Brad. We just smashed through 100 million in cumulative investments on the platform, broken up amongst 38,000 members. We're bringing on Dapper Labs, the unicorn, tomorrow, dropping at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. A lot of hot stuff in the mix.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Nick, the head of digital asset sales over there, what kind of products can we find on the LInqto platform, Nick?
Well, for most people have probably heard of us by now, but if you don't know, we sell pre-IPO private equity of tech companies, and just a few to name a few, we've got Ripple, Uphold, and LInqto ourselves are actually the top three sellers on the platform. We also have BlockFi, Abra, Varo, Whoop, and we just added Honeybook yesterday. We have over 20 assets available right now. I think about 28 assets available. So visit us at LInqto.com or download our app.
That's wonderful. And something that just hit me really quickly is I think everybody in this group happens to be a LInqto member, by the way. Yeah, how about that? Yeah, yeah. You know, feels like the old video pop-ups, right? You know what I mean, with the little facts that go on. All right, so let's get into this thing. There's a lot of news going on. There's a lot to get into. Recently, we've just had the LBRY case really kind of take front center stage here at what's going on. John Deaton, can you break this down for us and how important this case could be and what's really taking place here?
Well, I'd encourage everyone to get involved in the LBRY case. When I say get involved, I mean read up on it, because it's really a sad situation that the industry has let such a small but important platform basically be left on its own island. And it does have absolutely massive implications for the space. In fact, just a couple days ago, there was a CoinDesk article that stated that. And in that article, it said that in some ways, the LBRY case could have even more implications to the market than the Ripple case. And so it's a platform that is less than a 20 million market cap. And as offensive as people can become by learning what the SEC's done related to the Ripple case, it's even more offensive. And Brad, I'm an XRP holder. I don't own any LBRY credits, but you don't have to be a LBRY credit holder, an LBC holder, to get offended by it. How the SEC has approached this company. I did a recent interview that was out there on social media where basically the SEC told this guy, he came in there, he said, I'll dissolve the company, I'll sell my assets, I'll do whatever you want, but I can't register it because if you register it, it makes the platform useless. Tell me how to comply. And they basically said, that's not our job to tell you how to comply. And if you don't tell us do what we want, we'll make this very expensive. In other words, they will do what they can't do to Ripple, right? Is bleed this small operation until they tap out. I'll let Jeremy handle the precedent value of this potential case because I know he spoke about it on social media recently.
Yeah, Jeremy, this does feel like a catch-all bucket kind of case. Like if they know they're not going to get Ripple, they're picking on this little guy to try to get established that legal precedent. What say you?
That is what the SEC has been doing historically. They started off with some really small tokens in 2017. Their first lawsuits were against some really small companies, and they've kind of been building up to Ripple. Obviously, LBRY has hired Perkins Coie, who is not cheap. And I think we even heard, I think their CEO told John that they've spent, what, $2 million, John, or almost close to that?
Yep.
And that's what I thought it was going to be. I wasn't surprised when he told me that number, because when you have 10 or 20 lawyers working full time on your case, that's what it costs. Most companies cannot afford to do it. So definitely the SEC has been working up to this point. What we saw recently come down in the LBRY case is that the judge basically set out an order when summary judgment has to be done, and he put a trial date in September. So what that tells me is that the LBRY case is going to finish before the Ripple case. So we're going to have some finality to that case before finality in the Ripple case, unless Judge Torres does something completely shocking, which I just don't expect to happen. But I think no one that looks at that thinks that Ripple is going to finish first. What that means is that the LBRY case, whatever the rulings are that come down from that case, the SEC is going to take those rulings and file them like we've seen. Have you seen all these filings that have been happening the last couple of months where they file something from an order that just came down and they say, hey, look, this order helps us, Judge, so take a look at this. That's what the LBRY case is going to end up being for Ripple and the SEC in their case. You're going to see any decision that comes down, they're going to file it with the Ripple judge and say, look at this precedent, or maybe Ripple will use it if LBRY has good results. It's what's called persuasive authority. It's not going to be binding authority because you have judges that are the same level. And I don't know if they're in the same circuit, but it doesn't really matter as long as you have two trial judges. They like to be on the same line. Like if the Ripple judge says that the fair notice defense can't be dismissed and the LBRY judge says the exact opposite, now you kind of have two judges saying the exact different thing on the same issue. They don't like to do that, but it's called persuasive authority. It's not going to be binding. So the LBRY case will have some effect on the Ripple case, but it's not going to be the be all end all.
Hey, Brad, can I ask Jeremy or Seal a quick question?
Absolutely.
What do you guys think? We all know that the SEC did not move to strike the fair notice defense that LBRY set. Do you guys think that could have been intentional, hoping to potentially get a persuasive ruling to try to go back to Torres as a strategic move, or am I giving them too much credit?
No, I can just weigh in quickly. I mean, it seems to me that you used the word approach before. You said the SEC approached them. What if it's more of a matter of the SEC targeted them, right? Because it seems like the SEC moved forward with the charges against LBRY around the same time that Ripple raised the fair notice defense. So, and now that they've come out with more of a truncated timetable to, reach a decision on the LBRY case before the Ripple case, perhaps, I mean, what Jeremy says is true, is that they're just doing it to create some persuasive law, and they're going after a smaller actor. I mean, I think LBRY only, I think they only raised about 11 million, right, in their offering, and they've already spent 2 million on their defense. So, I mean, it just goes to show in terms of what kind of fish they are compared to Ripple. So, and I know Jeremy mentioned it before, is that, that's historically what the SEC has done, right? I think they've actually targeted LBRY to create some persuasive law, and it wouldn't surprise me if that timetable of September 8th actually gets shortened quite a bit to allow them some ability to use that law to their advantage, right, against Ripple. So I think it was by design, if you ask me. And that was my thoughts when I watched John's interview with Jeremy and kind of went through those things. It seems like it was an intentional target, because they realized that Ripple is a bigger fish, right? And I think the only reason they went after that bigger fish was because there was a big change in administration, and they realized, well, if we didn't do it now, of course they did it on the day before, Clayton departed. But I think, they probably were trying to wait a couple years more to go after Ripple. That would have been their timeline, but I think they have no choice. So I think that actually speaks volume about what type of behavior or conduct the SEC is engaged in to, make sure that they come out favorable at the end of this.
I wouldn't dare to contradict Attorney Seal because he owes me a bottle of maple liquor, and I'm worried he won't give it to me. So I completely agree.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. It's on its way.
I love it. Okay, so
full disclosure.
Yeah, if nobody has anything else, we'll move on to the next topic. Are we good? Okay, so the next topic here is outcome for Ripple case. Or actually, before we get there, let's talk about this. Upcoming rulings, because we've seen a lot of rulings like Jeremy Hogan said. Let's talk about that. What are we really looking to expect here in the near term for not just a Ripple case, but for Brad and Chris too?
Well, the big ruling that we're waiting for are the motion to reconsider. that is before Judge Netburn, as well as whether or not the Estabrook notes are going to be allowed or not allowed, produced to Ripple or not produced to Ripple. And for those that don't know, Estabrook notes is Attorney Estabrook was the attorney for Elad Roisman. And in September of 2018, Brad Garlinghouse met with Elad Roisman. And we know from Brad's testimony that after that meeting, Brad felt comforted. He had felt that that he was in good shape, or that Ripple and XRP was in good shape. Whether or not that means Elad Roisman said he didn't think XRP was a security if he went that far, but we know that Elad apparently said, I apologize for you even having to come to this meeting, which implies, certain things. And so that's really what we're waiting. And I think those are going to be the biggest decisions. The fair notice defense is the biggest issue, but, I think Jeremy and I and Seal were pretty confident that the judge wasn't going to strike it. But I know DAI has often said we're never going to see those 63 emails. So if we get Judge Netburn, if she orders that they must be produced, even though they'll appeal it to Judge Torres, that's going to be huge, because that would create the incentive for a settlement.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in there?
Well, I know Jeremy's had a few takes on it, but I honestly think, it seems like there's been 3 or 4 requests for these 63 emails to date with nothing being produced. And I know, now it seems that the SEC has sort of changed directions midstream from the Hinman speech being sort of his personal opinion to it being now more of a direction of where the SEC, making it more of a SEC official statement. So it's interesting. I honestly think there's a smoking gun in there somewhere that, they're going to go take all measures to sort of keep that smoking gun sort of buried, right? So it's been months now. I think when was the last time? When was the first time that it was ordered? Those emails ordered released. It was
May of last year.
Yeah, it was May, and then there was then they had a hearing, then they had a in-camera, review, and now they've got that motion to reconsider. It seems that they've taken quite a few steps, whether they've left their comfort zone or not, to protect whatever's in those emails. So to me, it seems like there's something that they don't want everybody to see.
So
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, DAI.
Hey, John, this is something that's bothered me. One of the most powerful videos, and boy, have we uncovered some videos, but one of the more powerful videos in this whole drama has been when you interviewed with, what was the guy's name? He's got a big podcast.
Patrick Bet David.
Yeah. When the clip where you're showing the redactions and all. Right. My question is this. Those redactions, as I recall, that was from the Hinman deposition. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's think about how many times that every time they're about to drill down or get some emails, or the 63 emails or anything else, the SEC files some motion to challenge it. Did Ripple ever challenge the redactions that were? They redacted almost every page in that. Is it possible? Are they even allowed to challenge those and say, wait, why are they redacting all of this? Or is that just something that is what it is?
Well, they can object, just like there's been times when the SEC's objected to something being sealed. But basically what happens is the SEC, after the deposition, they designated it confidential. So therefore it's designated confidential. Ripple obviously sees the unredacted version. It's just the public. And so I think it's a case of Ripple not, just picking their fights. Like for them, what is it, the goal to object to them redacting it so the public sees it? I think they're just picking their battles. So I think technically they could object, but I just don't see them seeing a need for it at this point.
Well, don't they want the digital asset investor to have content for his show? What do they think? They need to challenge some of this stuff so that we can go from 99% redaction to maybe 75, and we've got like blood in the water out here.
Right.
We'll make sure we get you the unredacted version.
Well, I mean, listen, although that if I do get, so I'm going to make sure I make this clear. If I do get allowed to see anything and I sign a protective order and stuff like that, I would never disclose it. But I'm hoping to see some of that in order to write an amicus brief. So at some point, there could be an issue where even amicus counsel wants to either have access to those redactions or actually challenge the redactions themselves. And if there's a way, something I'll research that I can do in order to provide you with that content, I'll do it, DAI.
Well, what you do is you just send me an email and put thumbnail in the subject line.
Just going to that point, John, you were able to get a copy of that Grunfest letter to Clayton, correct?
Yep.
Is that made public yet? Or is it?
No, the Grunfest letter is up on Crypto Law.
Oh, okay. I got to check it out.
That was a FOIA request, right?
Yeah. That was a FOIA request. I just actually got, I think it was already in the public domain, but I've sent several FOIA requests. They just sent me yesterday the Tom Cotton letter where he's talking about the need in 2018 to not suppress American innovation to Clayton and whatnot. I'll be releasing that soon too.
Oh, nice.
So I have a question, and I think a lot of people do know this, that this case is not a criminal matter. It's civil. That's why it's the SEC. What in the world is going on with this case, though? It's been a mess. I know that there's redacted documents. I'm not a lawyer, but this thing has literally been a mess. I mean, we're talking like with the LBRY case, this thing is really looking like a strong possibility between September and November based off the Zakhanov class action, right? And what we're seeing now with the LBRY case. Is that what we're really looking at, is going this much further, watching the can kicking down the road and the motion after motion? Is this just a process of court? What's going on here?
I feel your frustration, and I think John will back me up on this, but this case is not abnormal in any way. Now, the one thing that I don't like what the judge did, and I'll be honest about this, I don't criticize the judge very much, but I think she should have ruled on these motions to dismiss back after they were filed. I don't understand the waiting until all of the discovery is done and then ruling on dispositive motions. Makes absolutely no sense to me, because what could have happened is if she had agreed and stricken some of those motions or stricken some of the complaints, all of this discovery could have been done for no reason. Like if she had stricken the fair notice defense, all of the stuff that they had fought over and all of those depositions would have been useless because they wouldn't have been relevant. So I don't like that she did this, but every judge has their own way of doing it. Obviously, the judge in the LBRY case is moving their case forward quick. Judge Torres doesn't do that. And I've looked at some of her other dockets. I saw a docket that went on for 3 or 4 years. I mean, she would rather get it now. You could say that she'd rather get it done correctly than get it done quickly. And I think no one would disagree that that's the better course. I'm sure that's how she sees what she's doing. But at the same time, nothing here has been strange or abnormal. The motion for reconsideration on the emails was different. I've never seen anything like that before, which kind of raised my eyebrows. But I think there's a lot of frustration out there, and I think we all hear it and Seal hears it. But this is kind of stuff that we kind of live through every day. Like, I'll just give you an example. I had a deposition on Monday. I prepared all weekend. It was kind of a big one. It was supposed to be at 2:00 on Monday. I got an email at 11:00 Monday morning. Miss so-and-so is sick. She won't be able to attend. We're going to have to reschedule it. We get kind of used to it. If you saw that in the Ripple case, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. What's going on here? It is kind of the way that the lawyers and the courts work.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I'm obviously in a different jurisdiction, but no judge likes to get appealed. So they never want someone to put a magnifying glass on their decision and second guess them. So 100% agree with Jeremy. I mean, I think she's taking her time, making sure that she does it right. If there are delays, I mean, you're rather there are delays than a bad decision being made and it be appealed, because an appellate court can take years to resolve that. So 100% agree that she's definitely taking her time I think she's, making the right decisions along the way. And that footnote that you brought up there, I missed it when I read her order, but that footnote that dismissed the prior enforcement actions from the SEC, that was pretty interesting on page 5 of her order. That was pretty interesting how she basically gave him a kick in the groin and said, not only am I denying your motion to strike the fair notice, but I'm also denying your application to apply these, your past enforcement actions. So I've never seen that before either. Yeah, we call it like obiter, right? Because it's said in the footnotes as opposed to the, the main decision. But yeah, absolutely, that was fantastic, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I rarely do you read the footnotes. At least usually read
the footnotes where all the juicy stuff is.
Yeah, I know. Only in my writing, it's scintillating prose. But in a court order, I mean, it was definitely interesting to see her. Throw that in there. So,
well,
yeah, but
she's taking her time. Yeah, she's taking her time. I'm gonna. You notice how these two popular attorneys avoided your question because no one wants to be the bearer of bad news.
I can count on John Deaton. Let's have it.
Drop the hammer.
I think that absent a settlement, XRP holders have to accept that this is going to the fall.
Right.
I mean that you were asking that question. Is this going to get kicked to September, October? Absent a settlement, I believe it does. I believe Attorney Jeremy and Seal agree with that.
Yeah, I think.
Did I hear you say $100 XRP massive rise in the fall? Because that would be good for a thumbnail. I thought I heard that, but if I didn't, just let me know.
Well, apparently we know why DAI is on this conference.
That's exactly right.
I'm listening.
We're waiting for the sound bites here. All right. Speaking of, I got a sound bite. Go ahead, Linda.
Just along the lines of what DAI might say, which is that the world is all a stage.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, is there any connection, or could there be any consequence to the executive order coming out in a definite, we got the guidelines on the executive order. If something came out definite in terms of the executive order in crypto, could that be something that impacts this case?
I looked into that a couple of weeks ago, so I might be able to touch. Now, I looked into it in terms of congressional legislation. So if Congress were to, correct me if I'm not answering your question, but I think if Congress were to pass a law, for example, that says XRP is not a security, if they specifically intend the law to apply retroactively, they can do that. So Congress could, yes, in theory, they could do away with the lawsuit with the signature of the pen. An executive order is interesting. and I'm just talking off the top of my head now, but executive orders are very powerful, and the SEC is under the executive branch. So I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say, I think if there was something specific to the case and it was intended to apply retroactively and intended to apply to the Ripple SEC case, then yes, it could absolutely affect what's going on. It could end it.
Because it's just very interesting that they're both sort of around that September time horizon as well. And then we've got the ISO 20022 go live around November. So you've got liquidity really coming in right before, we've got this, we've got some big changes coming. So
well, this is where Brad would say this is the great reset, right? Like where everything's sort of gonna.
Is this a coordination?
It's sort of the perfect storm. Like you've got a bunch of different bodies making a bunch of different decisions, and everything comes together at the same time. I mean, the executive order to me seems like, they're going to need some time to coordinate all these different agencies and get everybody on the same page. Now, this is kind of to me, it's kind of it's the horn that kind of sounds everybody to get their act together. So, you've got a bunch of different agencies. It doesn't sound like the SEC actually does have a predominant role in Biden's executive order, from what I read of what the outline is. But it seems like they've been slammed for a bit of overreach, and so I think this is mostly sort of a delay to get the government into a position of advantage, and then kind of spring it on everyone, right? I mean, if I think we've learned anything from history is that the government doesn't do anything without them being sort of at the top of the pyramid, right? I mean, so I think this is sort of, Jeremy mentioned before that there's so many delays in this Ripple case, and he's obviously a litigator that sort of sees things from, from a real life perspective, whereas my stuff is more theoretical. I mean, so, the stuff when he says, hey, I've never seen this before in all the litigation I've ever done, I mean, that really sort of, like, my ears perk up when I hear stuff like that. And same with John, like, hey, we've never seen this in like our 20 years of litigating. And it just makes me realize that there's lots of different forces that are at play and lots of different elements at play. And it's all around a common reason. And the reason is because usually retail investors are into an investment long before the government is. So, I think history has proven that from the .com era to real estate. And I mean, there's been lots of things where the government, has moved the retail out through, media or control of, the investment institutional investors, and taken that role and implemented laws once they're in a position of advantage. And I think this is exactly the same case. I mean, we'll talk about this after about the escrow and what that looks like. But
yeah, Seal, let me catch it right there where you're at, because I love where you are. And I want to tie in where Linda was and how you got to where you are, right? So she's bringing up the executive order. We know September is about the time everybody's reporting back from the respective agencies. I've been talking about FSOC and the Treasury for 2 years or more. And obviously that includes OFAC too on the foreign side of that. The executive order specifically talks about systemic risk to the financial system as it pertains to cryptocurrencies as a matter of national security. And I think that'll get us here in a few minutes to where you're at, Seal, talking about the escrow and what we certainly agree on that. So this is going to heat up pretty quickly. But before we get there, I want to
Brad, what are you trying to say about that? What are you trying to say? I want you to spell it out. I don't know what you're talking about. I want to know exactly what you're thinking.
Well, look, here's what I think, DAI. This is what I think right here. I think there's a window of opportunity because if Ripple and XRP and the XRP ledger does what it says it can do, it'll easily qualify with the Treasury and FSOC to fall under systemic importance for a non-bank to be designated as systemically important financial market utility. And this is not the first time this would happen. We know the CME, we know CLS, the clearing houses, all of these other entities that do exactly what Ripple is building the market infrastructure to do, they do it, right? And we know that this really would qualify if we get it. I'm curious if we get some kind of crossroads with the case and the Treasury and the executive order that really gets Ripple through the door, because it could be used as a payment protocol, and RippleNet could be used and deemed as a SIFMU and attached to, let's say, a SWIFT, so you can't obfuscate sanctions and things if we're going to see different regulatory zones around the world develop because of this kind of fractionalized approach to payments to work around what SWIFT is today. So I mean, I think it's all right there for it to happen. Whether it happens or not in that manner is another. I don't even care if it does, right? I do believe ultimately we get there.
All the world's a stage file is like blinking red right now while you were talking.
Absolutely. And it really, I feel like it is too, DAI. I really do. And I know you do too. So look, as speaking of all the world's a stage, what's going on the B stage with the John Deaton class action case? This is 65,000 XRP holders being represented by the one and only. And I have to say, it's been a big deal on my show, and I know it's being talked about on Twitter too. Where is the Perry Ann Borings? Where is the Jake Travinsky's blockchain associations and the Digital Chamber of Commerce that are supposed to be industry representatives are starting to look a lot like special interest groups to me. Do we need public audits here? What's going on, John Deaton?
Well, I don't know where they are. I could tell you this. I think that the industry absence in the LBRY case is even worse than the Ripple case, because Ripple's Ripple. They're valued at $15 billion just recently, right? They have deep pockets. not that it's right. The industry should be there fighting too, but this little small cap library, the fact that they're not in there filing amicus briefs and trying to fight for the industry, that bothers me a lot. But as far as the 65,000 XRP holders, as I've said before, in an enforcement action, you are not allowed to pursue those claims against the SEC. We can't seek damages in this case. And we came in as trying to be defendants or in the alternative amicus. When this case is over and it settles or there's a summary judgment, then we can file a separate damages action, right? But I got to tell you, there are issues of sovereign immunity, qualified immunity. We really need to get people pushing for the investigation of these conflicts, right? Because, if immediately when I file a damages case and I cite Hinman or I cite Clayton, the first thing they're going to do is a motion to dismiss because they were acting within the scope of their duties as a government employee, and therefore they are protected. And right now, you can get over that with abuse of discretion standard. You can get over that if there's any kind of, malfeasance, corruption, quid pro quo. And so we really need an investigation for us to have our best chances, because I truly believe that there's going to be the smoking gun, if you will, uncovered. What I mean by that is I don't mean that they're stupid enough, one of them might be stupid enough to do this, but I won't go there.
Drop a name.
You guys.
We won't tell anybody.
Somebody that can't stop, running his mouth and brags about how much treasury he has and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but what I'm saying is there an email that says, okay, if I give Ether a free pass, you'll hire me at the fund? No. But imagine this. In the Empower documents, the emails, there's that email where the ethics office advised Bill Hinman that he shouldn't have go to an ad hoc meeting, a dinner where Simpson Thatcher lawyers would be. They said, that's not a good idea. Don't do it. So do you think they were aware that he was collecting 15 million? Well, they were aware he's getting retirement. Were they aware that he was going to give that free pass speech while Simpson Thatcher's an Enterprise Ethereum Alliance member? I doubt it. And so what we're doing is trying to get the banking committee members. I actually had a conference call today with the policy advisor of Senator Jack Reed, and we've been having these meetings to get them to ask for those inquiries, to ask for an investigation. Was the ethics office consulted in this decision? Because remember, the SEC says that the speech was his personal opinion. Then why did he give it? And if there's no other explanation other than $15 million, and then he goes and works for the same people that helped write the speech, there could be some real juicy things in there. What I mean by that is, imagine emails, text messages, bank records, digital wallet addresses. And if we can acquire some of that from an investigation, then we could possibly have one of the biggest financial cases in history. But if we rush it, when you have all these qualified immunity and sovereign immunity issues, it could be we could be kicked out of the court quick. So a lot of people confuse the amicus stuff with the post case stuff.
Hey, John.
You just met with Warren Davidson, didn't you?
Yes, met with Warren Davidson, and to his credit, it was him. He's the only actual congressman that I've talked to. The senators and the other congressmen has been their chief of staff or their policy advisors, but it was Warren Davidson himself. He was very receptive. You noticed, I'm sure you noticed, DAI, that he quote tweeted one of my tweets about the conflicts. He agrees, and so I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to do that.
What do we need to do to get him to man up, stand up, and say, all right, this needs to be investigated? I mean, how do you get from here to there?
basically is what we're doing is asking them to send letters, just like the recent letter that was just sent, Warren Davidson, Tom Emmer, and all of them, this effort thing they sent out today.
Yeah.
All it is letters. If the banking committee members send letters asking the SEC certain questions, they have to answer those questions. Right. Okay. It may take them a while, but they have to answer it, and they can ask for simple things as, was the ethics office consulted prior to giving the Ether speech? So what we're going to do is I'm going to draft questions that I suggest to them that they make to the SEC. And once that's done, then that's going to open up a huge issue for us. That's going to be very positive.
It's on like Donkey Kong, then, is what you're saying. That's good. I like that.
Absolutely,
yeah. Ray, you had something?
Yeah, quick question, John. Understanding that you're representing the 60,000 XRP holders, and some of those are live overseas or are foreign nationals, do you recommend any government agencies that they could reach out to potentially help influence this case, or
I mean, the
red flags?
The best thing to do right now is to go to the Crypto Law site. There's an International Connect to Congress petition. Last time I checked, it was somewhere between 20 and 23,000 people have already signed it.
Wow.
If we can get that up, to say to 30,000, then I can present that to the ranking members of the banking committees and to say, look, we have sent 50,000 messages from U.S. voters, and we have 30,000 international XRP holders simply asking for an investigation. And this is how we get it. What harm is it for them to investigate these conflicts and these improprieties? What's the harm? It's in the best interest of the SEC to restore faith in its agency. Maybe they conclude that there was actually no quid pro quo or no actual crime, but then they recommend a bunch of recommendations. Who knows? But I don't think it's a lot to ask once we get this. So I'm confident if they do that, that's going to help a lot.
Well, John, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a quick question. How compelling do you think it would be if you had the 65,000 holders of XRP swear affidavits that they didn't buy XRP, based on an investment contract, or even knew who Ripple was when they bought XRP? I mean, if that was something that, the judge had a look at in terms of a small, sort of pocket of those holders, I mean, would that not be compelling enough to say, well, hey, this doesn't meet the requirements of the Howey test in terms of an investment contract? I mean, I think that would be compelling. I mean, especially given that the SEC is an agency designed to protect those investors, and they're basically saying, well, look, I didn't even know who Ripple was when I bought XRP, or nor did I think I was, acquiring shares in Ripple when I bought XRP.
Well, Sil, I can tell you that it sounds like a great idea, and I can't get into too much, but let's just say it was a good idea.
That's the good soundbite right there.
Yeah, we love that. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, I know a guy that can help you get the. I know a couple of guys that can help you get some of those signatures if you need help.
You better believe it.
I mean, the reality is some of that's already been done, and pretty soon you'll see how it may have played out. That's all I can say right now.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, let's move to the next thing, because I do want to mention, speaking of the SEC, just as a quick side note, people are leaving that agency like the building's on fire. It's unbelievable. I mean, and I can't feel anything other than it's just like I want away from this place and what's going on right now. And I won't get into how many, but it's a long list. So let's move to the next thing here and start with Jeremy. Outcome for the Ripple case. We're not going to hold your feet to the fire, either one of you.
Brad, you did that wrong. You did that wrong.
$100 XRP by the
You
fall.
gotta say
That's right.
prediction, Brad.
Yeah.
You gotta say prediction for the SEC.
That's right. Yeah. What
That's
is your
what we-
prediction? Best case, worst case for the Ripple outcome?
Am I going first?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that the question
All
was
right.
directed at you.
$1,000 XRP in September. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Let's
Well
go.
done. I'll see you
And
later.
there's the
Have a good
thumbnail.
night.
And then there's John and Attorney Seal and anybody else that wants to contribute. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Hold on. Based on that recommendation, I'm buying.
He's buying.
Because Jeremy's never wrong. Damn it.
I know. Hell of a track record.
Okay, predictions. I still think the case settles, and nothing so far has changed my mind on that. We'll see how the emails play out, but you just got to go with the statistics. You got a 95% chance statistically of the case resolving. I still think that the Section 5 violation defense for Ripple is stronger than the fair notice defense. Fair notice defense in general is an equitable defense. I mean, it's based on fairness. Judges tend not to like those defenses for some reason. So if I had to look at my crystal ball for how this is going to resolve in litigation, I would say it resolves a summary judgment in favor of Ripple on the Section 5 violation. And I don't think she would touch on the fair notice defense then, because she would already have resolved it on the Section 5 violation. But I'm basing what I'm saying on seeing maybe 10, 15% of the evidence at this point. That's why you really can't say, because it's you're looking at one or two players on the football team and trying to tell you who's going to win the game. You could have Tom Brady in the quarterback, and then you have a peewee team on the rest of the field. You just can't tell by looking at what we have at this time.
So that was your lawyer disclaimer, like the SEC disclaimer. It's like, I'm going with this, but I'm giving my disclaimer. Attorney Seal, what do you got?
I think it all depends on what happened with this motion to reconsider. I think a lot of it comes back to that, in terms of if they've got to disclose these emails or not. I mean, again, if we're on a speculative sort of, we're obviously not players on the field, we're just spectators, but I think there is something there. I mean, I think the SEC has asked for 3 or 4 extensions now, and they've been granted. They've been delaying this disclosure of these emails. I honestly think there's something in there. I think once this motion to reconsider is, sort of deep dived on, and the judge make the decision on that, and if those emails, I think it was 66 or 63, if they actually end up having to disclose those, I think prior to disclosing those, they'll settle it.
Nice.
I just say that because I have to be different from Jeremy. Of course, if it does go to summary judgment, then that is the case. But I think if I think there will be an impetus to settle rather than than to disclose some of these emails, because settlement. Most of the law that I practice in involves settlement out of court. We're not rewriting the laws here. We're creating mutual beneficial agreements that both parties can live with. They control that outcome, right? If you go to summary judgment, you're just leaving it in the hands of a third-party, judge to make that decision, and you're bound by that decision. So, in negotiations and settlement, you have some, you're the sort of you can craft what you're comfortable with. So, I think that's going to be more beneficial to the SEC, and I just go. I can refer to one of the, I think, videos or clips that Jeremy posted on one of his sites or whatever, where it was, I think, Mr. Cohen. He was the digital. He used to work for the SEC as the head of digital currencies or something. And he basically said, like, the impact on the SEC if they were to lose would be detrimental to the program of the SEC, which is basically controlling that sort of space, right? It would be, people are watching, like, people have their eyes on it. If the SEC loses a case in a playground, they're reporting it. If it gets overturned the next day, it's being reported overseas and not at home. So he says the eyes are on the SEC, and them having that ultimate control and having that sort of impact on the whole regulatory body is paramount. So protecting that ability to control is what's important to them. So I think if that motion to reconsider is unfavorable to the SEC, I think they settle it.
Well,
go ahead, John.
Yeah, and John, before you go, I think a settlement, I think of the word compromise. One of the best definitions of compromise I ever heard was 2 or more parties agreeing on something they're not going to get. What's your thoughts on this case here, John?
Best case scenario, Judge Netburn rules in the next week that denies the motion to reconsider, orders the emails and documents to be turned over. The SEC appeals it. They have 14 days to Judge Torres. Judge Torres has the decision. She comes down sometime in mid-May with a decision affirming Judge Netburn's decision, gives the SEC 30 days to produce the documents, and it settles between mid-May and mid-June. By that time, Jeremy's prediction is correct, and Ripple only has to give up 100,000 XRP to settle the case for prior sales in the early years, and XRP and Ripple win.
Wow, that's incredible. So
that's the best case scenario.
That's best case scenario. Yeah, worst case scenario. Can they drop this case, ladies and gentlemen, and not have any clarity on XRP, even though Brad has said he wouldn't settle for that?
Theoretically, the SEC could go and say we want to move to dismiss, and Ripple objects, and the judge says that they have the discretion to do it and could order them to pay for Ripple's attorney's fees. That theoretically could happen. I think that it would be such egg on the face of the SEC that it would be very unlikely, because it would be such an embarrassment, because they would be able to negotiate some type of settlement. I mean, I don't care what anyone says, this has impacted Ripple's business more than people think. Yeah. And if Brad Garlinghouse could write a $50 million check right now, guaranteeing clarity for every future and ongoing sales of XRP, and they can IPO without any restriction 6 months thereafter, I think he writes the check tomorrow.
Wow.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Wow. Yeah. That's remarkable. Jeremy, any thoughts on that? Worst case scenario?
I'm sorry. I was still thinking back to the $1,000 XRP. I was going to ask Linda. My mind was thinking. I was like, Linda is an advisor. I was like, Linda, if XRP goes to $1,000, what should I do? That's literally what I wanted to ask. So. She's an author. She's a wealth advisor.
We think it's going a lot higher in the longer term, right? That's just an initial first level that we could come up with if they got 10% of SWIFT funds flowing through them. So that was really not to be the end all be all by any means. I think it will go much higher, but I think that was just kind of a first waypoint.
Well,
I've never heard that before from anyone. So that was amazing. Sorry, Brad.
Jeremy's going to go hang up and buy more XRP right now.
Yeah, he's FOMOing as we speak. He's getting on uphold right now.
He's like, buy XRP.
Absolutely. Well, to your point, Linda, because, we've talked about this too, about, obviously like a 10% adoption in SWIFT and a $1,200 XRP, all the money moving across the ledger. When we go back to the idea of the executive order talking about systemically important financial stability, we're talking about the idea that the Treasury said before the executive order came out that if Congress didn't get this done, they were going to do it. And that really separates the difference between the Treasury and FSOC, because they're not a market regulator, they're a prudential regulator. They have the ability to draft regulations without Congress's approval, and Congress really is if you look at it from one angle, Elizabeth Warren has been pushing in congressional hearings for FSOC and the Treasury to do it. She was grilling Nellie Liang, the Under Treasury Secretary, to get it done and to not wait for the moment to happen, but to do it before it happens and to deem certain things systemically important in crypto. And when I think of the XRP ledger, it's not just a ledger, it's a decentralized exchange that could solve a lot of these we don't know what you're doing with your crypto problems, right? As well as source liquidity. Talk about that, Linda.
Yeah, well, and in addition to that, when we read the executive order, it mentioned specifically something that could bridge legacy systems into the future. And the only thing that I know of that can bridge a legacy system, i.e. SWIFT, is XRP.
That's right.
So, I mean, to me, it was very clear that's what they were thinking when they wrote the executive order. And then just to circle back around to Jeremy's question, I just want to make the point that David Schwartz himself years ago did say, or maybe it was Arthur Brito, I could be getting that mixed up, did say that there was a $10,000 price point that XRP was actually designed for.
That's right.
So we do have that in the record.
Yes, we do. It was really designed for operating at a high price. You know, when I think about the idea of all this stuff, look, you guys know, most of you do anyway. I'm certainly someone who understands pre-allocation of XRP. They had an accelerator program where XRP was a very low price, and they had a $300 million accelerator program that they pre-allocated to the different areas of industry around the world and regions to really prime the pump there. So whether they did it in the form of a Greg Kidd options contract or an R3 option contract that was back in 2019, I don't know what those circumstances are, but we know it's been confirmed by Brad Garlinghouse on CNN with Julia Chatterley that at times they did do pre-contractual agreements. We know line 82 in the complaint with the SEC is non-cash agreements to achieve widespread adoption. I just find that to be so important, and it never really gets talked about a lot, because you can, if you look at what's happening around the world right now with SWIFT being the real undertow of what's going on with this Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? It is the undertow. And who owns SWIFT? It's privately owned by the banks, some of the same banks that happen to be partnered with RippleNet. RippleNet is literally designed market infrastructure to really replace or collaborate with SWIFT. It is the better version of that. And we all know that you don't need 100% adoption to be adopted. If you can impose 5% or 3% on market share and market capture, you're going to have an impact there. And somebody like SWIFT is going to say, we're going to collaborate or merge or something like that and make that change and get this thing done. And I think if you just take and kind of, even though some of these things, we don't know all the details, but they exist, the possibility is there, and the ground, I believe, is fertile to see the Treasury come in. And maybe that's where, you know, a LBRY case becomes this catch-all bucket to try to grab the rest of the crypto space, because isn't it so that they want to see the majority of the crypto space, not that I do, but the SEC, Gary Gensler specifically wants to see the majority of this crypto space deemed digital asset securities so they can tuck it into the securities framework, so they don't have to draft brand new legislation, brand new regulation for this brand new tech. They can make a few amendments and tuck it into the framework of securities law that already works. Isn't that what we're really seeing here? Who wants to
Brad, what do you say? Why are you saying you think this? Why was this lawsuit filed?
I think it was filed to really set legal precedent on what this new technology is, because I think this new technology, which as David Schwartz said, is a public good. And I believe before you can house all the money of the world, which I believe they've done to a great job to a degree, just like line 82, in getting non-cash agreement to hold an option contract on it. And I believe because everybody behind the scenes understands that this case is also a vetting process and an audit process of the company Ripple and the tech and how it works before you allow the world's money to roll across it, just like you allow the world's emails to run across SMT protocol.
Hey, Brad, but the SEC had a node for quite some time on the XRPL. What more additional time do you think they need right now with these multiple extensions of the case? I mean, if, like you said, this case was intended to set precedents for the entire space, then let's just get it over with. Why do you think they're asking for multiple extensions? Why do you think this is dragging on?
I think it's just like Jeremy and John said. This isn't abstract. This isn't unusual. This is the process of court. And this is the flow of how it works. And after discovery comes this, and after that comes this, and I get to rebut your motion, and you get to file another one. And it's a slow dance, right? And I mean, to me, you guys are seeing the normal procedure here. So
but Brad, let me ask you something.
Sure.
How many cases have you seen before the courts that are running through the court system, but also the federal government, the administration, the executive is, creating new laws and executive orders to sort of deal with that same space, right? I think people have to not be blind to that fact that while this case is kind of running its course through the court system, which is the judiciary, the executive branches also, and the congressional branches and the legislative branch, is also, working on the same thing. So this is, to me, I'm in Canada. I think everybody knows that. But so this, to me, is fascinating because, you've got the three separate branches of government. You've got the judiciary, you've got the executive, you've got the legislative branch, and they're all kind of working not in concert, but they're all working towards the same sort of clarity that you're trying to find. The executive branch is trying to find that clarity through executive orders. The judiciary branch is trying to find that clarity through, enforcement. And then you've got the congressional branch that's trying to sort of harmonize all these regulatory branches to create some type of congressional, mandates. And to John's point, whether there's an investigation or an oversight committee. So to me, this is the perfect storm. And I think people are putting on blinders to the fact that this is, there's 3 lanes of traffic here. If you're just looking at the lane you're in, which is, I think that's wrong, because I think there's going to be some point where all these lanes converge into one, and you better be ready to merge or you're going to get sort of roasted, right? So I think that's, to me, where, as an outsider, and I'm not involved as heavily as John and Jeremy are with the commentating, so I always take a backseat to them. But definitely, from an outsider's point of view, and I always look at it from 20,000 feet above, like a bird, you've got to wonder, like, what is going on? Like, and to Brad's point, is this the sort of mechanism for the Great Reset, where you've got everybody sort of working independently, however, in concert to achieve one objective? And that objective is to, get the advantage over the rest of the world, because I think we can all acknowledge that the US is far behind the rest of the world in regulating digital assets. And I think we all know that digital assets are the future.
They really are. CEO, I want to add to the point you're making very quickly here, and it's when something is a note. I think all of us in this stream believe that XRP is a virtual currency. We've been forced to have to think about it if it were to be a security, and all of these other different things we've had to speculate upon. But, when something is a note, we hear Hester Peirce. We've heard Gary Gensler multiple times talk about the Howey test, the Howey test, the Howey test. And then the Reeves test gets mentioned by Thurgood Marshall a few decades ago. I've done a lot of looking in this thing. And if you're going to use the Reeves test when something is a note, there are some family resemblances that you can use to see exceptions. And a note is money, right? So if you're going to have something qualify to be a note, and something can be a note and still be a security, as by their definition, and something can be a note and be a non-security. And the funny part of all of this is that if you're going to analyze through the Reeves test, as Gary Gensler has mentioned, as Hester Peirce has mentioned, you must start with the understanding that it is a security and then disprove it. There's no greater way to really start off with more conviction that this is a security than the SEC has by suing Ripple over XRP.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Brad, the one thing I can agree with for sure is your comment that that the SEC wants all of these cryptos to be considered digital asset securities. And we know that because the LBRY CEO basically said, okay, how can I comply? They said, we can't tell you how to comply. He said, if the LBRY corporation is what makes it a security, I'll dissolve it. If my own assets are making a security, I'll auction them off and all my assets. And they said no. you must register. And he said, is there anything I can do short of registration? And they said no. So we have that as proof of that. And we also know that Gary Gensler refuses, when there's a settlement with an exchange, they refuse to tell you which assets on that exchange constituted a security. And we know that Gary Gensler has repeatedly said, come in and register with us. So he wants Coinbase, he wants Uphold, he wants Kraken, all of them to come in and register that they're selling securities, but not identify which one of those are securities. So there's no doubt that that point that you were making is corroborated by the facts.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you, John.
I don't really understand what everybody on this call really thinks is what's going on. I mean, really thinks is going on. Like, why this was filed, why has this whole industry come since I got in 2013? This entire industry has been built on a lie. And the lie is that Bitcoin and Ethereum are somehow superior to everything else, and they're decentralized and all this, and it's all bull crap, okay? It's all bull, and everybody knows it's bull if they're really paying attention. They know proof of work does not work. They know it's too expensive, does not scale. It's everything that you wouldn't change over your financial system to do. It's everything, and everybody knows it. It's this huge elephant in the room. And now we've got an SEC that is taking it to the next level, and they're going after everybody that are not those two inferior things. So I want to know what everybody, because I think one flew over the cuckoo's nest with this whole thing. Now I've got it in my, I actually made a note here. Here's what I think they've done. The only thing that makes any sense to me is that somewhere in this thing early on, however many billionaires who tell the SEC and everybody else what they're going to do were early people in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they've carried this thing to this point, and that they know that they can't have it all, but this comes down to percentages, and that they want to control a larger piece of the pie. But the way this has come down, as we all sit here right now, the SEC is going after everybody who's not Bitcoin and Ethereum. You've got Bitcoin that they call a store of value, and they only did that because some of them got in a room at some point and realized that the white paper thing wasn't going to work out. And they got in a room and said, we're going to have to come up with a marketing term and call it store of value. Then they did a drop gold campaign, and that's why Bitcoin is what it is today. Okay? And I'm not saying it's not going to go up. It is, because these people have decided it is. Then you got Ethereum, and they've given a blessing to these two that are fact. I mean, you see this tweet going around that shows the gas fees that somebody sends it out every day. There's two digital assets that are far and away technologically way, way, way out in front. It's XRP and XLM, and it's always been that way since 2013. And here we sit in this Mickey Mouse court case, and none of it makes any sense. Why is the SEC going after everything but Bitcoin and Ethereum? They know that these things don't work. Is it because they're waiting on Ethereum to get this Ethereum 2.0? But along the way, they ran into a little problem called the XRP community, and now they got all this video. So what do they do with it? How do they handle it? And what in the world is the end game? What are they trying to do? Well, I want to hear the attorney's thoughts on this.
Absolutely. And to build to your point before they take off on it, I want to add this question to what DAI just laid down. What has to happen for justice to be served for all the people involved in the Ethereum free pass? That's what we're getting at here.
Well, listen, all I can tell you is what I wrote on January 1st. After 6 days of barricading myself in an apartment above my garage to write the writ of mandamus. And on January 1st, 9 days after they dropped the lawsuit, I wrote this lawsuit, that the lawsuit and the way it was framed and how it was filed made no sense. And the only explanation is it could have possibly been used as a weapon. I said that 9 days after the lawsuit was filed in a federal pleading, and I still believe it today.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that the lawsuit was used as a weapon. I believe that when you think of Web3 and you think of, you know, just look at the Elon Musk tweet and Jack, right? The owner of Square, or the founder of Square, his comments about how Web3 really is going into the pocket of venture capitalists. All right. So you even have the certain billionaires who, they may be Bitcoin maxis, but they certainly are calling it out. And so I still think that. And I said that before we had the XRP community and everyone and DAI and you, Brad, develop all that evidence. Before the video library was created on crypto law, proving everything, it was, this appears to be a weapon, and that it's not the end of the lawsuit that matters. It's not whether or not XRP is deemed a security or not a security, or a security in the early years, but not a security today. It doesn't matter. The lawsuit is what matters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well said. Seal?
It's a percentage game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, just going back to what John says, I mean, you know, Web 1 was basically sort of like, you know, you're viewing the internet, and Brian Brooks said it best. He said, look, it's sort of a curated garden where you're just viewing content, you're not interacting with it, you're just looking at a magazine, and it's very static. Web 2 was basically when, you know, Facebook came around and the internet became monetized, when you could actually make money off the internet, whether it was eBay or Google or Facebook, and now you can create blogs and you can interact with the internet. And up until Web 3, I mean, these big companies have been monetizing the internet. They've been making money off the internet, and retail investors like us simply, you know, sort of, you know, we take advantage of Facebook and, you know, Instagram because it's free. But these companies are making billions of dollars controlling that digital space. And that's what Web3 represents now, is crypto and NFTs represents a digital ownership of the internet. And there are going to be a lot of folks that are going to not want that. They do not want retail investors owning the internet. So that's what crypto represents. It represents your ownership of a digital token that's on the blockchain, and you own that piece. Same with NFTs. I mean, I've been moving into NFTs quite a bit in the last little while, but I mean, that's what they represent. So whenever you have players that they don't invite to the party, crashing the party, there's going to be the hosts of the party that are going to object to that. And that's what you're seeing right now, is a lot of resistance to retail investors moving into an institutional investor space, right? And those institutional investors are the big players like an Amazon and a Google and an eBay and a Bing and all those folks that have been making money off the internet. I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't made money off the internet, you know, as Web 2. So this is sort of, you know, where that sort of distinction comes. And it is going to be is there going to be a Web 4 and a Web 5? Absolutely. I mean, but this is a major staging point right now where people are drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, you stay on your side and you don't come over to my side. But it's a natural progression to move over to the other side. So absolutely. I mean, Web3 is a big deal. And I mean, that's what these digital assets represent.
Well, okay. So now, Jeremy, any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah. So if Linda's correct, the Ripple is sitting on trillions of dollars worth of XRP. I don't know the exact number, but someone can do the math. In the escrow, right?
It's a lot. It's a college term.
It's a lot. And, you know, I haven't really put a lot of thought into why the lawsuit was filed. I guess my question is, if the lawsuit was used as a weapon, why sue Ripple if the goal is to protect Bitcoin and Ethereum and the powers that be that are behind that? Now, I haven't quite put that together in my mind, but what I do know is this, and I don't know if you know this, Brad, but there was a lawsuit. I can't say the name, unfortunately, but there was a lawsuit by the SEC against a private company, and they took possession of the tokens. And I don't know if you know that, but that has happened in the past. The SEC said to the company, put the tokens at this address, and they're parked there as we speak today. And so I saw that, and immediately my mind goes to the escrow. because there's just so much money sitting there. And, you know, I haven't kind of crossed that line yet, but
why can you not give the name?
Because I was
you were involved?
I was an attorney involved in the case.
Okay. Understood.
And I,
Yeah.
John can. You can't tell him not
Yeah,
to.
sure.
Well, listen, you know.
Nothing you say is evidence, John.
Yeah, speaking of that, right? What happens to the escrow with Ripple? Look, if we're talking, if we're even close to right, okay, we're talking about XRP being used to serve an enormous percentage of cross-border payments and settle derivatives and many other things back end for many different situations, and things that aren't even developed yet will be used in those use cases to come. Are we to believe that we come out of this saying with a virtual currency designation and the world begins adopting this because it works so well like we know it does, and they get to keep all of it?
Well, there's been some question about that and what happens to the escrow, and some people think that it's going to end up at the IMF.
Well, interesting you say that, because, you know, we don't know where it goes, right? But what I do know is that the most vulnerable party is the United States, because they've printed more than $10 trillion and they happen to be the global reserve currency right now. So, I don't know where this goes. I always make the point that it would be the U.S. to want to, at least if there's some kind of international G7, G20 panel that kind of houses this escrow and decides, look, they wouldn't take all of it. They would just get it every month as it's released every month on its scheduled release, right? And instead of Ripple being the steward of the escrow, it'd be the U.S. Treasury. And maybe they disseminate that and vote on how much goes out. Maybe it's a blind auction and the second person, highest bidder, gets it. So that way it's an even split, and that helps determine price. We don't know. That Susan Athey has actually come up with that blind auction business, by the way. That's not me working off the fly here. So, there's a lot of potential possibilities on this outcome. The other one is Mr. Attorney Seal here, eminent domain. We could see the government come in just like they do with property, couldn't we?
Well,
Brad.
absolutely. I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, what if 80% of the validators say burn it before the government can take its hands on it?
Oh, see, John Deaton, now you're talking about what I talked about a couple weeks ago on my channel. That's exactly what I said. If they tried it, listen, this is what I've said about our protection as retail investors. If they try to confiscate our XRP like they did in gold back in the 30s, we can easily say everybody run a validator node, will put up an amendment to burn the escrow and tell the government to back off.
Yeah, but if the government's, so I'll just go back to a point I think I heard you make, in one of your segments where you said 80% of the U.S. Currency in circulation right now was printed in the last 2 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So to me, the U.S. is on its back foot, and in that sense, I mean, I can compare it to what's happening with the U.S. being threatened as the global reserve currency with the petrodollar. I mean, Saudi Arabia is considering now turning it into the petro yuan and, transacting oil to China, and they're putting less emphasis on U.S. protectionist, services that have been offered since the 70s. So that could really derail the U.S. as the global reserve currency, which they've been for the last 30 or 40 years. So that puts a significant pressure on the U.S. The fact that they've printed or minted 80% of the circulating supply in the last 2 years, I mean, means that they're, like I said, they're being threatened right now. So I think we can all agree that the U.S. is far behind any other country with respect to digital assets, like we just mentioned. I mean, they're the only country in the world that I think that looks at XRP as a security, so they need an edge, right? And the take I had, and I won't belabor the point, but the take I had a year ago, almost today, I think, was that the U.S. could use their, executive powers if Congress was to declare, regulating digital currencies as a matter of national security. they could actually invoke their eminent power domain powers and expropriate the escrow, from private property to public property, right? So, I mean, it's something that's been going on for years in the U.S., and it actually falls under the Fifth Amendment takings clause that basically says that if the government feels that some matter is a matter of national security, as long as they pay the holder fair market value and just compensation, they can expropriate that under the Fifth Amendment Act. So, it's been used for land or, IP rights, stocks, investments. So essentially the government could turn Facebook into a, public domain entity to protect people's privacy and data rights. So, the government has a lot of power. And I think as attorneys, I mean, we always know, and as taxpayers, we always know that if the government wants to do something and the government wants to take something, they're going to take it, right? And I mean, Jeremy resonated that point when I brought this, we discussed this a year ago. He said, look, if the government wants something, they're going to take it. And we go back to the Gold Reserve Act of 1933 with Roosevelt, right? I mean, they basically, took all the gold and basically said, well, look, we're passing an act under, I think it was the Trading with the Enemy Act, and they basically just took all the gold. And Jeremy made a point, and I saw it in one of his videos some time ago, where he said, they didn't basically go to your house and take all your gold, but they went to the people that were, the regulators, the guys who were the reserves, the exchanges, the refineries, and they took control over those, right? And eventually they basically, took all the gold in the U.S. that was available. And surprisingly, I mean, Fort Knox was created like a few years later, right? And I think they took like 13 metric tons or something of gold that they have there right now. So I don't know what the connection is between Fort Knox and Roosevelt's Act, I'll be honest. But I mean, ultimately, I mean, I think that's where the government goes with this. I mean, you've got all this XRP sitting in with Ripple. And I mean, I get it. There's a technical piece that, you can't, it's in time released escrow, and you need 80% of the, consensus to do anything with it. But I think ultimately, if the government wants it, I mean, they're going to get it. And I mean, I suspect that there is some impetus for the government wanting that escrow, whether they can get it or not. I mean, that's a technical debate. I'm a legal nerd, not a technical nerd, but I think if the government wants it, I mean, they'll find a way to legislate some way to get it, right? I mean,
hey, Brad, on behalf of tens of thousands of Ripple investors at LInqto, which I speak for at this moment, I sure hope every one of those 50 plus billion ZERPs stays right there in Ripple's escrow, so that it'll be part of their treasury after this thing gets settled, because I think it ends in a settlement myself. And I hope that they retain the entire escrow.
Well, to your point, Nick, and I think it's a fantastic point, and we can't rule any of this out because, it could be a situation where it kind of seals idea and thought to what exactly you're saying. Look, I believe RippleNet was designed to be the market infrastructure replacement for SWIFT. I also believe that PolySign and Standard Custody are the ultimate digital replacement for DTCC settlement for $1.6 quadrillion worth of derivative settlement every year. I also happen to believe, because the Fed is so vulnerable right now, that Ripple themselves could become a central bank of sorts, because we've been watching them exercise monetary policy with this XRP digital asset, and it could end up backstopping the Fed from the bloat that we've seen from this deliberate shutdown of the economy. Look, we don't have a lot of time left. Linda, let's have a thought.
I have to add this because I think we have depressed viewers right now, and I have to add this. So we have on the table the Jimmy Valley deal with the Fed.
Absolutely.
I think I need to review to make people aware of something that has happened in the XRP community. And that is, if you go back to 1913, that's when the Fed came into existence. Prior to that, we had the US Treasury that handled the money. And I think what's happening right now is we're going through basically a bankruptcy of the Fed.
That's right.
And we're going to go back to the US Treasury.
Yeah.
So what has to happen, and what Jimmy Valley said, for those of you who don't know, he's a I believe Houston, I think, attorney, and very experienced in the oil field and with M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and et cetera. And so he presented an offer to the Federal Reserve for a buyout. And the idea was that the Federal Reserve would have to buy out the dollar. Essentially, they own the debt. They issued the debt. They have to buy out the debt. And so Jimmy came in with a fair value of $37,500 per XRP. And he presented that to the Federal Reserve. Now, we don't know that there's been any deal done. We don't know that there's been any acceptance or any response by the Fed, but we do know that Jimmy presented that, valued it at that level, and that he feels that they would have to buy out all of the XRP for the amount of the debt of the dollar. And that's why they cannot go and pay 75 cents per XRP, because they have to buy out all the debt. And to buy out all the debt, it would cost $37,500 or in that range, he says, to buy out the debt.
And so I think that's such a great point, because I think that's how you backstop the Fed right there. DAI?
Well, I think that a lot of people misunderstood what Jimmy Valley was doing.
Exactly.
I think that he was trying to go on the record. So I think he wanted to have a record that he had approached the Fed with that, so that if they ever did try to take everybody's XRP, that he could hold that up and say, no, we tried to work something out with you. Am I wrong about this?
No,
isn't that what he was trying to do?
Absolutely. It was a catch-all in there, like a snare, that if in fact that the government did confiscate or move to confiscate it and then reprice it like they did gold back in the day, right, you have a class action set up right there, because we were well aware of what the real price, like Linda said, for XRP should be, or some variable of what an actual price would be, right? So yeah, really good stuff. Look, I know we're getting long on time, and this is really great.
I'll just make one quick point. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
This discussion was not meant to scare XRP holders. I mean, I'm an XRP holder. I'm a Ripple holder. I mean, these are just sort of theories of what, the government does have the power to do. And, whenever we have discourse about these topics that are very novel about digital asset, I mean, I honestly believe crypto is going to be the biggest transfer of wealth in modern American history or modern global history, right? Where retail investors are going to prosper at the expense of institutional. So in no way am I suggesting like, hey, the government's going to steal your XRP or expropriate it or whatever. But I think people have to be cognizant of what the powers of government are, because when people start asking questions like you guys asked to Jeremy and John, who are obviously boots on the ground, why are these cases happening? Why is people suing Ripple? Well, I mean, I think people have to understand that there is a reason why governments are going after a company like Ripple. So back to the escrow just for 1 second, is that if Ripple did not hold 50 billion in escrow, would they be sued, right? Why not just go after the exchanges, right? I mean, because ultimately the SEC is saying, well, Ripple has sold unregistered securities. But I mean, if they've had third parties selling those, why not go after the exchanges as well? So that's one question I guess I'll just leave people with when we talk about the escrow. And that's the only reason I focus on the escrow, is if Ripple did not have the escrow at all. So if they were just a third party, exchange or brokerage house like an Uphold or a Binance or a Coinbase, would they have gone after them? And that's where you realize how important the escrow is. And my mind just works as to find out why is that what is the impetus for that escrow, right?
Or if they were a Stellar who also had 100 billion XLM but burned them out of nowhere.
Well, yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't have gone after them either.
Yeah, you have to wonder, did Jed McCaleb meet with the SEC when Joe Luba was there?
Have to wonder.
Well, yeah, and that's another question, right? Like Jed McCaleb, like why is he not part of this issue? I mean, he was part of the Bitcoin, what's that, Mount Gox? I mean, he was there when that burned down, and he was he was at Ripple when this all transacted. So why has he got a free pass? But that's a conversation for another day.
It is. What I'll say on that note is if I'm ever at a party and Jed McCaleb leaves, I'm leaving too. That guy knows when to get out of a room. All right,
it's
so
like
let's final.
It's like the scene from The Godfather when they're all meeting in that room in that hotel and the helicopter shows up, but Jed's already gone.
You better believe it. If he's leaving, I'm leaving. Look, let's final thought this thing. Jeremy, let's have it. What do you got?
Well, I just want to give a shout out to John because I know that he's taken on a lot of work and it's a heavy burden. And, the sad truth is not the people that are supposed to be helping him are not there helping him. And that's a sad thing, but he's still doing it. So my final thoughts are a shout out to John for that.
Wonderful. Nick, what do you got?
I'm going to shout out to Chip and Jeff from On the Chain. I have a public bet with them. They think this thing is going to go all the way to the end of trial. And I say it's going to be a settlement, and we have a steak dinner bet on it. So I just like to thank them both because I'm looking forward to eating that steak.
That's wonderful. Attorney Seal?
Well, just two things. I think it ends in settlement. I mean, maybe that's, a bit against the grain of what the other lawyers think, but I think it ends in settlement. I think the SEC has got too much to risk to run this to trial or run this to summary judgment. That's just my take. I think there's a smoking gun laying somewhere. Maybe that's just the way my brain works. But and the other shout out is to John. I mean, your boots on the ground, John, and I mean you represent 65,000 plus XRP holders. And I asked you at the start of the segment. I said, how do you find time to manage your practice and what you do for the community and your family? And honestly, hats off to you. And same with Jeremy. I mean, absolutely, 100%. You've been informing this community, the whole way through. And I always respect your takes. And I mean, I always find them very, very insightful and very clear to understand. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. John Deaton?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. My final thought would be for DAI's question about why this lawsuit happened and the weapon. I think we may find out a little more information if we could find out how much ETH and ERC20 tokens JP Morgan is involved with.
Come on in. Ray Fuentes?
You know what, you guys, I'm just thankful to be here. You, amongst all you professionals and just very smart and savvy investors, and thankful and proud to be a part of the XRP community, part of the LInqto family. Since I can't offer too much, all I can just say is check out www.linqto.com. We're democratizing private investing. For just $10,000, you can get a piece of some of the action in the picks and shovels of these companies that are developing the future financial framework of the globe. So I'm just an honor to be here. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Linda?
I just want to say thank you for including me tonight amongst all of you. I just have respected your work for so long, and thank you for everything you're doing for XRP and the community. I think you just keep us informed. You do work for us. You're doing so much, in everyone in their own way, that it's all a Herculean effort. And I know that everyone is really grateful for all the work that you do. So I just want to say thank you. And I think XRP is going to get some clarity. And I think that that is going to hopefully set it on the right path. But hopefully, I don't know exactly whether that's going to be a settlement, or I guess it's going to be not a settlement, but I don't know. I hope they get clarity and we can move forward.
Well, thank you, DAI.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to, and I want to thank the Disguised Whales, and I want to thank the Brooklyn Project. And the reason I want to do that is because ultimately that's the reason that Ripple and XRP come out of this thing smelling like a rose. They can't let us get anywhere near those disguised whales. They have to make this go away before we ever get anywhere close to smelling that blubber. I can promise you that. They can't let us get near. If you remember that Charles Gasparino video where back in 2018, where Andrew Keys had told him that the Brooklyn Project was a project that was working with it was endorsed by the SEC and the CFTC. They can't let us get anywhere near that. This thing has to go away before we find out exactly what happened there. And that's the reason we're going to win. That's the reason nobody listening to my voice has anything really to worry about. because they can't let us get to that. That's where these 63 emails lead. That's where all this stuff leads, is to those things that they can never let the public see, because this thing has a stink that's coming through my MacBook Pro here, and it's not going away. They have to make this go away. All right, that's it.
That's amazing.
That's a good soundbite.
I absolutely love it. That is straight fired from DAI. Look, I'm going to leave it right here. I've said enough through this whole thing. What I can tell you is I really am grateful for each and every one of you in your busy lives. And I want to give an extra special shout out to John Deaton. Man, you do so much, man, for 65,000 people, and you're squeezing it in with your normal life, which is not normal anymore. You know, and I mean, it's a wonder. I mean, you're living the life of a YouTuber plus 1,000. You know what I mean? It's like what you're doing.
Right.
His presence is just amazing. I wake up at 3 a.m. and he just tweeted something. It's like, this guy's on fire, man. Your passion is just absolutely contagious. So I want to thank you and Jeremy and Seal and Nick and Ray and Linda and DAI, all of you, for taking the time from your families. It's really an honor to have you here. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, guys, so much. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Yep.
And my daughter just crawled for the first time just a moment ago. I'm gonna go.
What?
Oh.